representative. I'd like to, on occasion, maybe see more student involvement in addition to going to the schools, especially at the high school level, coming in here and presenting some things that they're doing, interesting things that we don't hear about. If there's things out of the ordinary, you know, I mean, I know
How about getting the president of the student council or people like that
something
to
like
come in?
that, or
You know, different organizations, class offices maybe from one of the classes, something like that.
You could even come in and talk about the whole, college transcript,
College,
and writing
right.
for, just to give parents that are coming up to the middle school an idea of, when do we start this, how
Right.
soon,
I mean, I think
kind
that
of outreach to us.
I think that's a good idea. More participation.
I'm sorry, I
Karen?
just wanna make one suggestion, and it's very small, but I would prefer calling this family and community relations. I know it's a very small distinction, but in the work that I do with parents and families,
That's fine.
it's just a distinction, acknowledging that
The
a child
families.
is raised by a family, not
That's
just
fine.
parents and not.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
We have put the communications subcommittee on hold, but I'm hearing that there may be some opportunity
Yeah.
for the committee to come together. So maybe when we get to subcommittee today, we can schedule a meeting, because I see some of this falling under that subcommittee.
And I also would like to talk about, I really would like us to do a monthly cable television show, whether it's you and one administrator, or, you know, an administrator roundtable every month, and you have a specific topic you discuss. One month it might be MCAS, one month it might be,
I think that's a great idea. I don't know if we have, that's a great idea. I think it also would afford us an opportunity, the sooner we start, to do the secondary school
right.
building. I don't know if anybody watches the Andover School of Law seminars that they have on over the weekend, and I'm not, I happen to watch them, but they have a dean or a professor at the Andover School of Law sit down at a round table and discuss various topics. Could be anything from sports to politics to, whatever. And it's actually pretty interesting. There's nothing else on at that time, so.
At 3 in the morning?
I do watch it. No. But it's actually pretty interesting, and something like that, it's a way to bring to
but
light.
you've seen all the articles that the administrators and other staff have written, and a lot of those are extremely interesting, so you could just extrapolate that over to a cable
And
television
something like the school
program.
building project presentation wouldn't be a bad thing to put on there as well. So-
I agree.
Maybe we YouTube it instead.
I'm sorry, Mike?
YouTube, you could use YouTube
it.
also.
I just think that, the television aspect, we're not even getting a lot of viewers now. Imagine,
What's YouTube?
you know,
No.
it's
Well, one thing
internet
we-
streaming, but I'm just thinking maybe we create our own YouTube channel
You know-
instead, and then they could do it right out of their offices.
You know what that ties into, though? That ties into a whole social media policy, which isn't part of this, which I think we need to talk about and at some point.
But-
And it also ties into the need for more staff to coordinate that stuff to make sure it's done right.
Right.
At least starting off with the cable, that's not a bad idea.
But Mike's
if
right,
we could put
YouTube, you're gonna get a
together
lot, everybody,
My entire family
Right.
would watch it on YouTube.
right,
not
everybody goes to
up on
their,
cable.
right.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's easy to just hit
We
the
could have a
screen,
North-
pause it, come back later if you wanted to.
Well, this is part of communications, and it's what we could have a North Reading Schools Facebook page, a Google Plus page, a YouTube channel,
Yeah.
a Twitter account, a LinkedIn account, but that's really more business oriented.
Right.
But there's opportunities, and this issue is swirling right now. I think Lynn, I don't know if they passed a policy, but are looking at policy to ban teacher contact with students in social media. Personally, I disagree with that.
I think there was a big article in the MCAS magazine this month about that, Mel.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to use social media that can be beneficial if it's done right. So, but that's for the communications subcommittee
And policy.
and policy too.
Policy, we'll
Right.
be looking at that.
Yeah.
Anything else under the communications, community relations aspect of our goals, or anything in general about the goals? I gotta say, Mel and Kathy, you did a pretty good job
Fantastic
of
job.
making this
I
a
wanted to
little
ask
bit more
I wanted to ask Kathy
understandable
though
than it
about
was.
the under community partnerships. You had mentioned that you were meeting or going to a meeting a couple of weeks ago with the North Reading Chamber of Commerce. I'm just not sure what local business involvement is with our schools and what more we could do to involve local businesses and how we could benefit from that, aside from them donating things, but actually getting them into the classrooms or just talking about different kinds of businesses. And I mean, there's actually a lot of interesting businesses in North Reading.
It's not just North Reading.
Well, and yeah,
The-
right,
the,
it's
the
surrounding
state
area.
has a program where they're taking specific science and engineering fields and paying teachers for the summer
Right.
to intern at those companies and then do presentation and even bring a class back.
Mm-hmm.
So those are real interesting programs.
Right. And that's something I think, I know Kathy started looking at that, where we can maybe get some things that don't cost us any money, or cost us very little money,
Mm-hmm.
so.
Okay, anything else on the goals? Good job.
Very nice job.
Yeah.
Are you interested in having these goals and activities placed in an action plan format similar to what we did last year, or shall we just leave it in this format? We did both last year. We had the format that you see in front of you today, and then it was put into an action plan format, particularly for the subcommittees to be able to
I think that-
plan forward.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea. I hate to
Can be
create
done
extra
with
work, but I
a lot
think
of work, yeah.
I think having an action plan is nice to see. Some of these maybe don't lend themselves to a specific action plan, but some do.
Mm-hmm.
I think
I think it's helpful.
that was helpful for the evaluation committee.
Yeah, it was really helpful.
We knew we had to get certain stuff done. We actually had real deadlines
Right.
associated with, Ms. Willis's contract.
Right.
So that helped a little bit, but I think it's important to understand that some of these goals are intermediary and aren't just an annual goal, that there's,
Right.
because we specify in here, for example, our NREA contract and
Right.
be done by June, whatever. And I
Right.
think it helps us remind us of the time.
It's a calendar. I agree.
All right, I'm gonna ask for a motion to approve the goals as presented tonight. Anybody can make that motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, Cliff has made the motion, Mel has seconded. Any further discussion reading the vote to approve the goals? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, the motion carries by a vote of 5-0. Next on the agenda, the FY11 final budget report. I'm gonna ask Director of Finance and Operations, Tom Nelson, to make that report.
Thank you.
I am so excited about this topic.
You know, this is, well, you know, it's funny, there's a certain amount of closure that your Director of Finance and Operations also feels when this report is delivered, because we do so as a matter of record. It's, I think, appropriate to file the report as a matter of record. The FY11 budget year is over. Its presence in your packet today also means that the town of North Reading and the school department is in full agreement with our summary of spending. And of course, those funds that we return, all 1,300 of them, help comprise the town's free cash estimate that we enter FY12 in. And of course, you may have heard that the town's free cash is going to be in the vicinity of around $900,000 this year. So that's a separate issue. But if a quick summary of the FY11 year from a financial perspective is shown here. As you know, the first page represents a summary of the expenses, those being the non-payroll pieces of our operation. And you'll note that there were 3 areas that we were able to extract savings from, budget savings, down towards the bottom of the page, beginning with gas and oil, utilities, and then a couple lines lower, insurance programs, which comprises workman's compensation costs and unemployment costs, things of that nature. So those 3 were the 3 largest, I wouldn't call them budget surplus areas as much as I would call them areas that we were able to save money in through, I'd like to think, operating a frugal operation. So we were able to take those funds, and it helps us pay for things that might be in the red. In some cases, special education costs, in some cases, transportation costs. As you know, the Mass General laws allow school departments to transfer funds and just live within a bottom line. So those were 3 areas that we've been able to save money in. On the other side of the ledger, on the payroll side, the year ended up coming in very, very close to what the projections were going to be. Up in the paraprofessional area, I'm looking at the balance column, I guess, when I'm speaking here, to kind of manifest change that way. We ended up hiring 1 less paraprofessional in our learning center than we had forecast at the very, very beginning of the year. That provided a little bit of cushion. And then towards the bottom of the page, both custodial and special education transportation yielded surpluses. In both cases, in terms of custodial, we had no long-term illnesses, long-term injuries at all, so that yielded those funds. And in the special education area, the transportation area, that represents employees that we have on our payroll to provide transportation to special education children in lieu of contracting out that service. And we yielded money there because we have really an outstanding set of drivers who just are never sick, which means we never have to hire substitutes. So that's really why that cost was generated there. The good news also is, if I could refer you back to that first page, when you look towards the bottom under the tuition, which is towards the bottom of the expense page there, you'll see a figure under, it's called FY11 committed. And on that tuition page, you see that we ended the year committed or encumbering $109,000 for special education. That represents prepayments we were able to make, and that's great news for the district, because we are allowed under, again, Mass General laws to prepay summer special education tuitions, which means that we pay for them, in effect, out of FY11, and are then able to reduce the FY12 tuition budget by that same amount because we've made some prepayments. The committee may recall we did expect that to happen to some extent. In other words, the FY12 budget was somewhat dependent on some tuition prepayments, but it's safe to say that we have some money in the bank, so to speak, as we move through FY12 to either deal with emergencies or to be reallocated or to carry forward for the following year. So we have that cushion there, which is very comforting. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions of Kyle on the wrap-up report for FY11?
Carl, it's a rather small amount in the budget, but we were off by almost 50% in the special ed transportation. Was there a specific reason for that? Is that something we can anticipate happening again this year? That's under expenses, not under the
I see.
transportation that we
Yes,
provide.
No, that was, we were having a transition in the PPS department as the FY11 budget was being created a year ago spring. The $90,000 budget figure turned out to be insufficient based on the kinds of transportation costs we had.
Okay.
That's contract transportation,
That's
Kyle, as
all
opposed
contract
to-
there.
yeah.
You know what, a specific example there, without earmarking the individual, is there, from time to time, there are special education youngsters that require more than just transportation. We have some youngsters that also require medical personnel in the van as that transportation is taking place. And one or two examples, they tend to be registered nurses that are required in some cases, and we did have some examples of that nature that we didn't anticipate in FY12.
That's a big expense.
That
right
very quickly,
So these are medically fragile children as well?
Yeah.
Are they on vents and things like that, or, I don't know why they would be.
things of that nature, yeah,
Mechanical assistance, okay.
yes.
there. Okay. Any other questions, Kyle?
No, looks good.
Kyle, thank you, and it should be pointed out that looks like we returned $1,376 to the town.
It's nice of
Okay.
us.
It's a nice little precedent
Yeah.
to identify during planning.
Well, we've already been through that with,
We
the,
did.
with the financial
We
planning
did
team.
over and over again.
We were trying to actually not repeat it, but that's all right. No, this is wise planning on our part. Next on the agenda is the FY13 budget goals. And again, the budget process starts, I think, now. Again, I'd ask, Kyle, did you put this together, or Kathy, or both of you together?
Before we do that, now, I think as we go along, that's not is that working for you?
It is.
It says to me, unable to view file, no internet connection.
I
on-
downloaded everything first.
I did too, but I guess this didn't.
Is
All
it
right,
in
let's end
pages?
this experiment now.
Yeah.
This
But anyway,
is-
we
this
can
is
go.
not
I
working.
don't,
Okay.
I don't have to look at the goals.
Thank you. There are two documents here. There are not only the goals, but the proposed budget development calendar. And the goals, we know, by the way, aren't updated to represent this year's school committee officers. We will be updating that once we update the goals. This is just last year's set of goals. So, yeah, I would first, though, pose the question, perhaps rhetorically, though. For many years, we have the school committee has adopted a separate and distinct set of budget goals.